If there's one legal battle in the video games industry right now that has been nothing short of crazy, it's the Nintendo versus Palworld lawsuit, which I've been covering for months now, because the outcome of this event is going to be biblical if it ends up going in Nintendo's favor. And now we have new information that is likely going to cause Nintendo to have a meltdown of anger. And the reason people are paying attention isn't because lawsuits in gaming are something rare, and they happen all the time actually. But what makes this different is what Nintendo is actually trying to claim, and what it reveals about where the company is mentally right now and going in the future too. Because instead of wanting real authentic competition with other companies like we usually do, Nintendo is pulling out the big money to mask their laziness instead, when they should be focused on, innovation, instead of asking why millions of players suddenly flock to a game that they didn't make. Nintendo appears to be doing the one thing that giant corporations always do when they feel threatened like this. They reach for lawyers because it hurts their bottom line. Yep, Palworld is a big thorn in Nintendo's cheeks at this point that they really want to get out. So what happened now? As KitGuru.com reported here, US Patent Office revokes Nintendo Patent Central to Palworld lawsuit. So a bit of a refresher and why this new revelation is crazy important to the overall integrity of video games is that Nintendo tried to sue Palworld over a few patents. One of these was the concept of capturing creatures in ball-like devices, which obviously something like Pokemon is famous for. Palworld did a similar idea, which Nintendo believed that they owned the patent. We already know this was categorically false, since Nintendo already lost that part of their lawsuit because you can't claim to own a gameplay concept that results in a function that reaches the same outcome. Like, for example, right, if you use a trap in Monster Hunter, you can capture monsters in that game if you've played it. By definition, though, the trap in Monster Hunter functions very similarly to the concept of a Pokeball. Sure, yeah, okay, it's not sphere-shaped, but the trap, like the Pokeball, it still does the same thing. It captures the monster. So by Nintendo's definition, then, Monster Hunter's traps should be sued too, but they aren't. The only reason why they hate Palworld is very, very simple, because Palworld sold something like 12 million units right out of the gate, and ended up crushing all their expectations in like a week or two, which if you're Nintendo, that's not good, because it means a game that costs less to buy and is also bigger than your game is selling just as good as your mainline Pokemon series on other consoles too. That is a big deal. Nintendo hates that. Nintendo also tried to say that they own the patent for flying mounts or riding mounts too. So they basically tried to say they own the right to like riding a horse in a game kind of. Also another patent that ended up now working in their favor, because that too got cooked by judges for very good reason, because you can't own something like that. It would be like id Software, which makes Doom, saying that we own the right to shooting guns in games. Like, no, you can't. You really don't. That's like saying some game dev out there owns the right to like a first-person view mode. You're crazy if you try to patent that, by the way. Anyways, Nintendo, however, always had their one ace in the hole, the one patent that really could screw over everyone, not just Palworld. This patent was the art of summoning. Basically, Nintendo believed through their patents that they owned the rights to summoning help in a video game. This was the worst of their patents because it was the most widely damaging of all the other patents they had. Because if Nintendo could prove that they owned this wholly, it would mean concepts like co-op in a game, or summoning, say, a creature in Final Fantasy to damage enemies, or yes, even summoning your creature-like companions in a video game, were all things that Nintendo could now own. Thankfully, this new update has revealed that of the 26 variations of this lawsuit, yeah, there are 26 versions of summoning patents that Nintendo had, if you can believe that, but they have all, and I mean all, been completely rejected by the United States of America's legal jurisdictions. So this is amazing news, because it severely hampers the power that Nintendo now has over not just Palworld, but everyone else too. Because if they won this, it would mean that every game where you summon help would technically need to pay Nintendo to now use these features, which is obviously egregious beyond belief because it makes no sense at all. The crazy part is Nintendo was so hellbent and bullish on this front that these patents that got rejected, they weren't even old either. They got filed in 2025, which means that Nintendo was scraping the bottom of the barrel and trying everything they could to get any any sort of leg up on Palworld and Pocket Pair, which proves, just how scummy they were really trying to be here. They were actually willing to doom everyone and sink the ship pretty much to ensure that there would be no competition to their Pokemon franchise. Which, hey, I get it, right? Pokemon is the biggest IP in the world. It's worth more and makes more than IPs like Spider-Man, Batman, and Hello Kitty combined, if you can believe it. Despite this loss, which is still significant, it doesn't mean that Nintendo is down and out though. As GamesFrey, who's been covering this extensively for months, so all credit to them, said as seen here, Nintendo can reject this decision and try to get it redone, so to speak, in order for it to swing in their favor. They have about 2 months from right now to get this done, but the probability of that actually going in Nintendo's favor is very, very unlikely. Some of you are probably wondering, well, wait a minute, what does it matter what an American court thinks about two Japanese games fighting each other? That's a good question to ask, actually. You see, due to things being very global, as we all know, Pokemon obviously so, patents and whatnot can vary wildly based on which court is overseeing it. Sure, maybe in Japan, Nintendo would have more leeway since they are Japanese, obviously, but even if Nintendo were to win this lawsuit in Japan, it would not mean they automatically win it worldwide. Think of it like a game where you have a bounty in one region but not another. If you go to that other region, your bounty is meaningless because, yeah, it's a new place. That's kind of how this works too. However, since the United States Patent Office, or USPTO for short, just flat out said no to Nintendo, this is still bad for them. Because obviously, Nintendo's money doesn't just come from Japan. North American users make up a large bulk of their player base and income. And if you can't swindle the Americans into believing your own this bogus patent, yeah, you're gonna get cooked. Because now Palworld can operate freely, which again is exactly what Nintendo doesn't want to happen. Because the main demand of Nintendo is, if they win any of these lawsuits, is they want Palworld to flat out not exist anymore at all. Like in their own legal cause, if Nintendo wins, right? They want every copy of Palworld removed, destroyed, and the entire IP to be dead and gone forever. As for no other reason than to just be an example of Nintendo's superiority over the whole Pocket Monster genre, I guess. But the fact that this didn't happen, well, I'm sure there's a boardroom of Nintendo executives right now shaking their fists like they're J. Jonah Jameson asking for pictures of Spider-Man right now in anger. GamesFrey's worry is that since the last time Nintendo got owned by Palworld, which was in October 2025, a lot of games like Pokemon have either released or been revealed since then, as they say here. GamesFrey wonders if Nintendo will avert their attention to these other Pokemon-like games as well, because so many of them are showing up. And I mean, who can blame them, right? It's a lucrative genre aimed at kids, and there's a lot of money, like an insane amount to be made there. But the reality is that Nintendo can't even be mad. I mean, Pokemon is only on their consoles anyways. There's millions of PlayStation, Steam, Xbox users who would all buy Pokemon games in a heartbeat if they showed up on those platforms officially. Hell, I would. Are you kidding me? I could platinum a Pokemon game? Yeah, sign me up. I would do that for sure. But we both know Nintendo wouldn't do that because it would lessen the reasoning for buying their console in the first place. So I get it. But you can't blame Palworld for wanting to cater to those huge demographics if Nintendo wasn't willing to in the first place. It's not Palworld's fault that the Pokemon games aren't on PlayStation, right? There's also a 104-page document about the entire Nintendo Palworld lawsuit that has been updated. There's no way I'm going to go through all of this, otherwise we'd be here all day. But I'll leave a link to this in the description box if you want to go through yourselves, but for my own sanity, I'm good, thanks. However, when you do go look into how Nintendo tried to do this and how deep it still goes, it gets ridiculous really fast. As seen here, of the 26 patents that Nintendo is trying to force through court, one, named Tora, which is a variation of the summoning patent by the way, it also clashes with two other patents named Yabe and Motokura. These are all variations of the same patent, with little changes here or there to just make them more legally difficult to get removed. This is like what they are. Then you have Shimamoto at the bottom there, that is patented by Bandai Namco actually, which was a similar patent, but also didn't work. That can be used against Nintendo because it would mean that their patent can't exist anyways. since if Bandai had it 6 years prior to you, despite theirs not really working either, it still means you can't patent something that already existed, right? And remember how I said Nintendo was hellbent on ruining Palworld through any small changes they could find in their own patents? Well, look at this from Games Fray. They presented here as you can see, and dude, such a mishmash of just combinations of various patents in different orders, all meaning the same thing but different just enough that they can just wiggle it through patent offenses to hopefully destroy Palworld. Like it's actual supervillain behavior on display. Imagine being a lawyer and having to sit there going through all of this meaningless jargon, knowing that it's just designed to waste your time and confuse everybody involved. And all of this because Nintendo doesn't want to share their Pokemon pie with anyone. Look how Nintendo even worded their patent name Tora in the US Patent Office, as you can see here. A game system that is a non-limiting example information processing system comprising a main body apparatus, and this main body apparatus is provided with a left controller and a right controller in an attachable and detachable manner. Each of the left and right controller comprises a plurality of operation buttons and an analog stick. In a first operations mode, actions of a player character is controlled according to an operation of a player. In a second operation mode, a sub-character appears, that's the summon. An action of the sub-character is automatically controlled except for a case where the sub-character attacks an enemy character according to the depression of a ZL button. In a third operation mode, movement of the player character and movement of the sub-character are respectively controlled according to an operation of the player. Like, just look at how they worded that, man. It's such a word salad that just says we want to own the right to summoning anything in a game. It's just ridiculous. Like, you can see the Yabe pattern here as well, which is very carefully constructed word salad as well, that just takes what that Tora pattern is about, but remixes it just enough to make it sound different, so that Nintendo gets to patent it not once, but twice now. Again, this is what Nintendo does, people. They want to own everything that can challenge them, because as long as nobody can beat them at their own game, they can just keep making billions while, not really doing much. I mean, remember Pokemon Legends ZA and how mediocre that game ended up being? There was barely any exploration to be had in that game that even felt meaningful. Its world was small, its story was not good and forgettable, and they still refused to add voice acting to the series because it'll cost them money. Oh no, it'll cost you some more money than the basically negative amount you already spent to make a Nintendo. How could you? But despite that, right, the Legend ZA still sold millions. Sure, it sold less maybe than the other Pokemon games, but it still sold what other publishers could really only dream of, and that's kind of the point. If there's no alternative to Pokemon, you can get away with anything you make. That is the goal. Nintendo doesn't care where else are you gonna play Pokemon, right? Exactly. Now, pay up is pretty much how they think. Like, remember when they released the Mega Dimension DLC to Legend ZA, which was $30 American or $40 if you're Canadian? As you can see here on the Canadian Nintendo eShop, like, this is how Nintendo gets away with these things, because nobody can challenge them. So that's why it's such a big win that all of their patents, as of right now, are being completely decimated by patent offices, as they should be. Because Nintendo can't be allowed to bully people like this. It's not right. Like, nor is it fair. Again, I get it, right? Palworld blew up. The Steam servers and whatnot exploded, the game went just viral, it was dominating the conversation when it released. But I think the reason why you saw the response to Palworld was very simple, because to some capacity, it was what players wanted from Pokemon. Not the guns and shooting them part, I mean, but the fact that it felt polished, it was a huge game, and what Pokemon should have already become years ago. Yet, as we all know, it wasn't. Plus, Legends, Arceus, and Scarlet and Violet, they had technical problems. Scarlet and Violet especially, man, that ran like dog water at release. Yet despite that, they still sold something like 10 million units or more in its opening release window. A massive success for, yes, a lazy game. Nintendo has always had outdated hardware, like that's also nothing new. But they usually got around this by having games that ran beautifully and played to their strengths with great game design. Like, look at Mario and Zelda, obviously. Pokemon should be a Mario or Zelda quality product, but as we all know, it kind of isn't. There's no reason why Pokemon can't have the budget of a new Zelda game, but the answer is obvious, because Pokemon doesn't need to be good to sell well. Zelda, for example, and it is both that franchise's strength and weakness, I have to admit, is that Zelda needs to be forward-thinking and innovated every single time a game is made there. If there is any one franchise that Nintendo owns that needs to be a masterpiece pretty much every time, yeah, it's The Legend of Zelda. And it's simple as to why, right? Zelda games are usually, anyways, meant to be the showcase titles for Nintendo's current hardware era that they're in. That's why stuff like Skyward Sword had the crazy sword Wii controls, right? It was all meant to define what the Wii was. Same way with Ocarina of Time or Breath of the Wild even too. These games, all great to some capacity, sure, they all exist to be the crown jewel for Nintendo. So they can't release a new Zelda every single year because it actually needs to be amazing, because that's what people expect out of it. Mario is kind of the same, right? Those games are always technical masterpieces too of innovative game design and crystal clear gameplay. Like Mario 3D Land on the 3DS, dude, that game is incredible in how it uses the 3D like functions in that game. It's so freaking good, dude. But when it comes to Pokemon, it's just lazy. There's nothing to say there, right? It's turn-based, which is immediately easier to do over what Zelda or Mario do. But Nintendo even forgets or just doesn't even care to add many unique animations to their Pokemon either. And nobody gets bled dry for money every game like a Pokemon fan these days too, because Nintendo knows that they can tap that vein whenever they want to. They could announce a new Pokemon game tomorrow, release it the same day, and 1 million people at least, right, will buy it regardless of price, and they know that they will. So that's why this whole lawsuit with Palworld is so important to Nintendo. These patents aren't just patents to them. It's more like, I don't know, legal ammunition that Nintendo wants to use. But it also sends a message that is kind of disturbing actually, because what Nintendo is implying with all of this is that innovation isn't something that you can really compete with these days. Instead, it's something you can just lawyer away, and that's messed up, man. Because think of the signal that this sends to the rest of the industry. You have a smaller studio in Pocket Pair. They take a risk. They experiment. They combine ideas from crafting games and survival and Pocket Monster stuff, and you can like use guns and whatever, and people end up loving the game. They actually ended up loving Palworld, maybe a little too much, and the response that one of the most powerful companies in gaming comes back with is that they own the concept. It then sends a disturbing message to anyone who tries to innovate or tread into Nintendo's territory, because suddenly it's not about innovation or making something better or like improving the state of games. If Nintendo's first response is simply, "We'll see you in court," like, excuse me, for what? For having a meal? A succulent Pocket Monster meal? Like, I get it, right? It's nothing new for Nintendo to be protective of their IP. They've also shut down fan projects, ROM sites, tournaments. They even tried to sue grocery stores for having the name Super in the name, but this more recent lawsuit nonsense, it just feels like something has changed, you know? Like, the aggression has escalated for Nintendo, and it feels less like confident brand protection to me, and more so like Nintendo as a company feels as if they're being cornered by games like this, by them just simply existing. And I think Nintendo just doesn't want games to exist that challenge what they do. They don't want open world Pocket Monster games or sandbox game systems or stuff like that, right? And they definitely don't want that from a small studio like a Pocket Pair, because it proves something dangerous that Nintendo doesn't want others to know or realize. That you actually can make a sandbox-like experience based around the Pokemon idea that can feel wild and unpredictable. You just have to try, which Nintendo really doesn't want to do. Which then brings us to the real question at the heart of this. Why does Palworld's existence feel like such a threat to Nintendo then? Why do all of this? If I had to answer that, it would be that Palworld exposed a gap, right? A massive one at that, in Nintendo's game design and player satisfaction when it came to Pokemon specifically. Players clearly wanted more experimentation in their genre. You can't blame them for that. They wanted systems that interact with each other more and emergent gameplay that actually matters. Like, again, who can blame them? You can only play the same game so many times before it gets boring, and that's what a lot of Pokemon games are, let's be real. But Nintendo, they want Pokemon to be stuck to releasing safe, formulaic iterations because it's easier to replicate. And when someone steps in, like a Palworld has and proves that the demand is real, Nintendo's answer should have been more creativity, but instead, it was just more litigation. And that's why this story matters, like, beyond any one game. This isn't just about Palworld. Because if other major publishers begin to start using vague patents to attack their competitors, we're then just entering a future where ideas themselves start becoming copyrighted territory, where experimentation, which by the way is what drives innovation, is no longer seen as a good thing, but now a potentially dangerous idea. Because it not only may lead to future lawsuits, but it will feel like if you want to do anything new, that you have to ask permission first from others, which is stupid and totally against the entire concept. Like, that's not a healthy industry, guys. That's a lockdown minefield, and that really sucks. Look, I don't hate Nintendo. They are, and always will be, the legendary people that made Mario and Zelda. They helped define generations of games. I get it. But the company that we're seeing right now doesn't look like the fearless innovators that once reinvented the industry to me. It looks like a giant that's trying to protect territory it no longer dominates. And Palworld might have accidentally exposed that weakness for everybody to see, which will just make Nintendo even meaner in the future. Because look, right at the end of the day, people did what they always do, right? They voted with their wallets, they tried something new, and they ended up loving it. No lawsuit can erase that. And no patent library can stop the question hanging over Nintendo, which they fear more than anything, which is if a small studio could capture the imagination of millions like they did, well, then why couldn't you? And that uncomfortable answer might end up being the thing that Nintendo fears the most, because inspiration doesn't come from lawyers. It comes from taking risks. The exact risks that led to Pokemon being made in the first place are now conveniently not allowed to exist in Nintendo's eyes. So what then? Only they are allowed to benefit from experimentation and forward-thinking ideas? But if someone beats them to the punch, now it's suddenly a problem? You see what I mean? Does that sound healthy to you? What we need is more innovation, we need more risk, and more cool games. Like, of course we do. If it means smashing that game idea with this one, hey, I'm all for it. You can never be wrong to wanting more choice when it comes to your entertainment. Maybe Nintendo shouldn't be so angry at Palworld, and instead, they should just work to surpass it, prove that they're better, and show the world and Palworld can't exist just fine because we're Pokemon, we're Nintendo, we're the better game in the end anyways. But they need to actually try to do that, which I don't think Nintendo is gonna want to do, honestly. I guess we'll see, but this entire situation, it's kind of a mess either way. But what do you think about all of this? Is Nintendo in the right or the wrong here, or do you think Palworld shouldn't exist at all? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to. And let's hope that this doesn't scare developers from making the next big thing, just because the bigger fish want more to eat.